I guess I should sort of explain how the play came about too, because it kind of makes a circle in a way, because the play evolved out of a journal entry, which is some random journal entry I wrote when my father passed away. I mean, literally, I was listening to my iPod at the time, and I heard a song that reminded me of being 18 and going on a trip to Palestine, and I started writing about this trip to Palestine. The one time I went with my family when I was 18 years old in 1992, and I wrote that, and it was in my journal, and that was it. And then this was just after my father passed away in 2003. At the time, I had already started a theater company with some other Arab American performers. We were all actors who had grown up in America and had parents or grandparents from the Middle East, but until 9/11, we hadn't been seen as minorities or officially become Arab Americans. And then we were working in the entertainment industry as actor, theater, and auditioning for film and TV and theater, and suddenly we became Arabs. So we had started this company to explore that theme. And long story short, we had been invited to a school to give a performance, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, so I showed the other members of the company this journal entry, and I said, I kind of want to perform something like this that tells this story. And they said, you should just perform this. So I did. And then it became something I performed a couple more times, and then New York Theater Workshop, which is an off-Broadway theater in New York, encouraged me to develop it. And I kept saying, I don't have anything else to say. It's already 15 minutes. What else could I possibly say? And eventually I developed it with a dramaturg and director, and it grew into an hour and 40-minute play that then we ended up producing off-Broadway. From that, I at some point was doing a reading of it somewhere at a theater festival, and I was approached by a literary agent who said, you write very well, which of course made me annoyed because I wanted to be approached by a theatrical agent who said, you're so good at acting, and you should consider writing a book. And I thought, okay, thank you. And I sort of followed up a little, but not very eagerly. And then ultimately, when the show was running, I had connected with my father's literary agents who had very much encouraged the idea of turning it into a book. And so I did get a book contract, and all I thought to myself was, they're going to pay me. So that was the first thing. And then I thought, I'm just going to take the play and fluff it up a little so it's more pages. And then that, I realized, was not really what it took. It was definitely daunting. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know how to tell the same story without having the ability to convey certain things with my voice, my movements, my personality. There's a certain skill you get from being a performer and learning how to. I was able to do stand-up comedy a few times, not by telling funny jokes, but by knowing how to engage an audience and make them laugh. But if you actually broke down my jokes, they weren't very funny. So it was more like what I'm doing now, and then you could just get people to laugh and sort of chuckle. And so it was sort of along those lines. I thought, well, now I have to write an actual book and use my prose to tell this story. I can't rely on my persona or my energy or my voice or my characterizations, and that was so scary. The other thing I had mentioned was I wrote the play in a completely conversational, colloquial voice. It was basic storytelling, me telling the story. When I started to write the book, I knew I had to change. My editor had said, do you think you can write in regular prose? And I thought, of course, because I went to Princeton and I majored in literature. But then that turned out to be me writing in proper English with no contractions and perfect grammar. And then she said, okay, can you not write an essay? Can you write a book? So there was this in-between place that I had to find that was casual and warm, and especially because they kept saying we want this to be read by young people. And so accessible, casual, warm, really like I was talking, but not too much like I was talking. And I found that to be the biggest challenge. So what I initially thought would be me copying and pasting my play onto a new document and then like adding some details became a completely different animal. And the portions of the play that are in the book are fully intact, and the entire play is in the book. It's just spread out so, it's like they're paragraphs throughout the book, but it's not, you wouldn't be able to pick them out and realize that that was the play. So it did become something completely different. And that was incredibly daunting and difficult. But I think it also freed me up a little bit in the writing process, because I was also quite intimidated by the idea of writing a book or writing a memoir, which is a whole other thing that you know, when you get a contract to write a memoir when you're 36, everyone's like, well, what do you have to say? And then you have to explain that there are different types of memoirs, and so that was difficult too. I had to write what they wanted me to write about, which was a particular theme that was in the play but wasn't the entire play. What I liked about that was the play was more about me and my relationship with my father, and the book is more about me and my relationship with my entire family and the whole world.